For athletes, it's such a big deal to plan when they're going to have a child.
Their response at the time was, what's your husband doing? Everything is opportunity. So sports is really a vehicle. The assignment was not to be the MVP. The assignment was to learn how to lead from behind or whatever seat you find yourself.
Welcome back to season 3 of Clack. It's our first guest episode, and we are so freaking excited about this one. Jack, who do we have coming on the show?
We're coming into season 3 guns blazing. We have someone who I have admired for a long time. I was in the WIN program with her, Olympia Scott. Her background and just accolades to everything that she's done is absolutely amazing. She played at Stanford, played for the WNBA for 10 years. She was the first WNBA player to win a championship for 2 different teams. She gave birth to the first daughter of the WNBA. She went through the WIN program and has worked at Nike for the past 4 years. She's co-founded with her mother a parenting education company called the Super Parenting LLC. She founded a coaching company called Changing the Game Coaching. And last but certainly not least, she is about to publish her second book.
I mean, the list of accolades are absolutely incredible. She is the definition of a multidimensional woman.
Yeah, no, O is a special woman. She captivates a room every time she walks in it. When she speaks, you just listen. And
it's a gift.
Yeah, it's really gonna be a treat for us.
Amazing. Well, before we jump into the interview, we do want to remind everybody to do Jackie's favorite thing.
Please like and subscribe to our channels anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yay!
Hey, mic drop, let's go. I did that.
Olympia, we are so honored to have you on our show. Welcome to Clack. It is truly so exciting to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I feel like I've been thinking about this for a long time, having you come in to our show, into our studio, so I'm really happy you're here.
It's true. You were one of the first names when Jackie and I started this podcast that we were like, if we could have any dream guests come on, who would it be? She's like, Olympia Scott is an incredible, she is the definition of a multidimensional woman. And so now here we are, almost 9 months later.
And I think I nicknamed you President one time because I'm like, the way you speak, how you like captivate a room, like everything, even just you, I was fortunate enough to have you in my cohort at the WIN program. And right when we all got on the Zoom calls, I was like, oh my gosh, like this woman is incredible. It was so quick for me to find out like how amazing you were. So I'm really happy that you're here.
Thank you. And funny story, when I played in Indiana, it was when it was Conseco Fieldhouse. So we called ourselves Conseco Mafia. You know how you like, we're all into character.
Right.
And my nickname was CEO. So that's funny.
Yeah. I was on the right path.
So we're going to jump into our first topic, which I'm really excited to pick your brain on. And you had the first daughter of the WNBA. So tell us about that. What was that like for you and for her?
Yes, I'd like to give a shout out to Cheryl Swoops, who's technically the first mother of the WNBA.
So, yeah,
but I'm the first player to actually play a season and then have a baby and return to action. So it was interesting from the standpoint that we didn't really know a mother's readiness for action postpartum. So it was really truly setting the precedence for what are the protocols returning to action. I had her April 7th, and I believe training camp that year started May 5th. I had gained 65 pounds in pregnancy and only lost about 10 of it in the delivery. So I was still over 50 pounds overweight. We were doing 2-a-days. I was doing an extra hour on the treadmill in between practices, lifting weights, doing everything to get back in shape. And my daughter, Briaja, she had her days and nights mixed up. So she was sleep all day and up all night, you know, all the wonderful things with motherhood. But it was interesting because we weren't prepared for that as a league. My pregnancy, because I was on the injured reserve due to a pregnancy, it was considered maternity leave. So I was technically only getting half of my salary as a result. And it was something where, you know, I went to the team and said, hey, how about you switch me with this other person that's on injured reserve so that I can get my entire salary, right? Because I was technically doing more than everyone else. And their response at the time was, what's your husband doing? You know? So my thing was, I don't really care if he's a billionaire. I'm talking about the money I'm here earning.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting from that standpoint that you could tell we were still in an organization that was male dominated, all of which they had children and families.
Yeah.
You know, for me, hey, I'm the mom in our family, so I have to dedicate my body to the cause. So my agent actually had to petition at one point for me to be activated. That was a whole nother can of worms that was opened up, because then I was put through some very serious rigors after like very competitive practices. And you know how it is, Jackie.
Yeah.
You can have a practice where every drill is competitive. So you're running sprints for every drill. I'm on the third team. So of course my team is losing every drill because I'm not with the starters or the better players. And it was a grueling experience of having to prove that I'm in shape enough to be activated. And then interestingly, I was activated and still didn't play. And then we went to LA for a game, and I'm from Los Angeles. So my mom, you know, had our family purchase over 100 tickets, like in a group ticket lot. Just a really big deal. And the night before the game, I got a phone call that I had been traded to Detroit. And so instead of playing in that game at home with all my family and friends at the game, I was flying out to Detroit that day.
The same day?
The very next day, because I got the phone call at night. So the next day I flew out to Detroit, and it was interesting also because the person I was traded for did not report to Utah. So then it was something where the trade might have been rescinded, a whole big deal. But then I, you know, went on to play in Detroit and, you know, a few other teams for 10 seasons.
At this point, were you still like overweight from the pregnancy, or had you lost the weight by then? Because as you're talking through this, I'm thinking about the risk that you were putting your body in for injury. Because like, I know you've had an ACL tear. So that's like, to me, that's what stands out a lot, is like having you come back like that, the risk to injury. Like, that's crazy to me.
Well, I did dislocate my fingers after pregnancy. I don't think it was during that season, but you know, your ligaments get looser so that your pelvis can get wider. So I do think the finger dislocations were due to that, and potentially the ACL tear. But I did lose most of the weight at that point.
Oh, okay. Damn, you lost weight fast.
Well, I think my body understood the assignment.
Right.
Like, we don't need this weight anymore. We're done with the baby. Let's return to form. So
I've had 2 kids, and I know, I still like remember that experience of birthing those children and then getting back into some form of movement. I can't even comprehend going back from the dates you just shared about 6 weeks after you had your baby. Is that right?
Maybe even 5.
With my first child, I was at a company that had just established maternity leave. And for me, like 8 weeks, I was like, how am I going to do this? I was a 30-year-old woman. My husband was just working at night. I'm like, how am I going to do this? But I was the breadwinner. He was still in school. And so I can't even fathom what it would be like to go back that early and to put your body through that amount of stress and pressure when you just had that kind of trauma to your body. Like that's unbelievable. That's like some superwoman status right there.
No, for real.
I think we should call her superwoman instead of CEO.
Or both.
Or both.
That's fine.
Okay, I'll take both of those. Thank you. But we embody that. You know, it's funny you mentioned it. I think when you're in situations like that, hindsight's always 20/20. But I think when you're in the thick of it, you're thinking, I want it all, right? I'm trying to be a professional basketball player, a wife, a mother. We're trying to live the dream. So I was immersed in that process, and in the, you know, prime of my youth, right? I'm at the beginning of my debut. This is right after my rookie year. So I didn't want to lose a season. And I was also the breadwinner of my family, and just excited about the prospect of returning to form. So,
I mean, I think it just emphasizes for me the power of what women can truly do. Because when we put our minds to something, like in your case, you wanted to have it all. You wanted to be a mother. You wanted to be a star player. You wanted to be a wife and have a life and a family. I mean, that is something most people could never even dream of achieving. And it truly speaks to your character and in terms of how you've built your life. I mean, that drive it's remarkable.
Well, thank you. You know, you're trying to live the dream, right? We're in the WNBA. You're excited. I've arrived. This is the pinnacle of a basketball career.
We'll do anything.
Yeah.
We'll do what it takes.
Yeah.
So 26 years later, right? And now where the WNBA stands today, things are a lot different in terms of how they treat mothers and how they treat players that are going through pregnancy. What's your perspective on all that?
I think we still have a long way to go. I think it's the only industry where you could potentially truly lose someone and they're unable to do their job. So I think we still have a long way to go in terms of expectations. If someone is injured, they're maybe treated differently than making the choice, right, to have a child. So it's different. This is family planning. This is something that potentially teams are uncomfortable with, the premise of you choosing to have a child and maybe choosing to even have another child. These are seasons that you may be lost. So I think we still have a long way to go, but we've come pretty far.
I think I looked into the data, and don't quote me on this, but I think there's only somewhere between 8 to 12 mothers currently in the WNBA. And you think about the teams expanding and the franchises expanding, and it's just going to put more pressure on the need. And we also know it's CBA season. There's a lot of tension building around what's going to happen. I'm hopeful that family planning is part of that discussion. But, you know, I think it's such an important topic because we know women get injured at a higher rate than men in sports. You both have had ACL tears in your professional careers. It's like, you know, you add on the pressure of family planning and the importance of that to keep these women in sports and to be able to make money by keeping these players in sports. Like, it's a huge, I mean, I think it should be a top priority.
Absolutely. But when you mentioned a really important stat, if only 8 to 12 mothers are currently in the league, that's only 8 to 12 potential people lobbying for that particular aspect of the entire collective bargaining agreement. So if we're not going to get everything across, it is a negotiation. Then what falls through the cracks, what's being prioritized, and maybe not family planning.
But I do think there's a lot of women that would like to plan that and trying to figure out what the right time is for them as an athlete, because as we know, I don't know if your pregnancy was planned or not, but for athletes, it's such a big deal to plan when they're going to have a child. Do they do it in the beginning of their careers when they're at the peak of their performance? Do they wait until they're older, but then you risk not being able to come back and be as good because, you know, things are slowed down by then? So I do think there's more women than we think that are fighting for it. And that's just my take. That's just my thought.
Well, and I agree with you. I think it is clearly, in my case, it was very important. But I've been involved with more than one collective bargaining agreement, and I'm literally sat across the table from the late David Stern, negotiating. And it can be very contentious. In most negotiations, you're not going to get everything that you want.
Right.
So I'm curious to see how it pans out in terms of family planning, because you're right, it's never a right time to have a child. But in this case in particular, family planning is really key.
For sure. Yeah, and there's one point you both made that I think is interesting just to touch on here. So Cristiano Ronaldo spends over $1 million a year on his health. Imagine if women had that kind of money to focus on their health, rehabbing after having a child. Like, I think there's still such a gap, as we all know, in women's health and being able to address some of the issues like around motherhood and performance and how do we keep women in the game longer, that I think if some of those problems were solved and there was actually an investment there in the league, we actually would keep some of these players longer and we would keep them healthier.
I agree. It is an interesting topic. And I think, as the league continues and we realize we're here to stay, this is actually a way of life for many women. It's a career. So then family planning is actually a factor. This is something that, 30 years ago, we weren't thinking about how quickly can women return from action. Like, we don't even research women in healthcare the same way we do men. So there's a lot of things left unanswered.
Yeah. But let's get these athletes paid first.
Yeah, right?
Honestly,
Exactly.
That's where it all starts in my mind. Like, invest
sure.
in the athletes, get them paid more. Something occurred to me, and I think it'd be a powerful call to action to kind of the next generation of athletes and mothers. So Olympia, if you were to give advice to a woman who's in the WNBA today about family planning, what would you tell them to think about?
It's never the right time to have a child. It's disruptive. Your life is no longer your own. It becomes your child's life, willingly, gladly. And so if you want children, go for it. It's never the right time. So if you're blessed with the opportunity to grow your family, it's such a blessing. Grow your family. Because no matter what, basketball is finite. So I'm very happy that I did what I did. My daughter was able to travel to other countries with me because I played year round. She went to school in other languages. It was such an experience for her. It was amazing. I'm glad I did it. If I had to do it over again, I would do the same thing.
That's amazing.
I love that advice because I think that advice, even for me who wasn't a professional athlete, I mean, women ask this question of themselves every day, you know, like as we're young and we're planning what we want to do, and when we're ambitious and we want to live our dreams, it's like it changes everything. And so I think it's actually advice not just for athletes, but advice for women.
Thank you. But yes, to your point, we're people, right?
Yes.
So we're your daughters, your sisters, your mothers. We're people, and so that's just a part of life.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. So Olympia, we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about your life after basketball. And it's something we talk a lot about on this show because that Jackie went through the exact same experience. What were you thinking about when you knew your basketball career was ending and what you were going to do next? Like, what were some of the things that were going through your mind?
I think I had the blessing of maybe a slow transition out of basketball because I tore my ACL and never fully recovered. So I played the last few years of my career in a different role. I also had a daughter, so I was already thinking of life after the game. And I had already started the beginnings of what would turn into Super Parenting LLC with my mom. So I think I was like maybe preparing for the transition. So it was a shock, but it wasn't. You know, it's like I was planning for it. So I was ready to get into that next phase. We said my nickname was CEO. So I'm thinking I'm trying to CEO something, right? I'm doing something.
When that time actually came for you, was that part a shock? I know like the preparation leading up to it was like, okay, you kind of prepared yourself in a way, but like when you actually stopped playing, how was that for you?
Well, you know, it's funny because what sealed the deal in terms of officially being done playing, I stopped playing in the WNBA maybe in 2008. I played a few more years overseas, and I had gone to the Dominican Republic with the U.S. State Department and the WNBA as a sports ambassador. And when I returned from that trip, I realized my daughter had had her period and we were synced up. And I was like, really? You know? So what actually caused me to truly be done playing was the fact that I was pregnant with my now 13-year-old son. So that sealed the deal. I was like, there's no way I'm coming back after this, you know, with having already torn my ACL and all that, that had gone into that. So I think really for me, because the shock was about being pregnant after so much time, which I did want to grow the family, but I waited until I retired or until I was being retired by it. So so the shock was really more about now having another child. Yeah.
So let's fast forward a little bit and talk about the WIN program. If you could tell us a little bit about your experience there, that'd be great.
You know, it's so funny, like every story seems so dramatic, but it's just life. I was like in a major life transition when the WIN opportunity came up. I had just split from my son's father maybe a year or two prior to that. Then that same year, my sister died suddenly of a heart attack. And then COVID hit. And so I had a kindergartner in Spanish immersion kindergarten and a third grader, both at home full time. And then my father passed away of COVID. This all happened within a very short period of time. And so I believe it was just God clearing the decks, because then a few months later, I was recruited into the WIN program. I had heard of the WIN program through our Retired Players Association, and I thought that it was potentially more of an internship, because we do have internship opportunities that come through. And I'm so far past the internship portion of my financial responsibilities that I just didn't really tune in. And fortunately, though, I was recruited and told about the program, and, you know, I'm available, right? Because I had lost my job due to COVID and went through all of the steps. And, you know, there came a time, fortunately, I was comfortable actually having the salary conversation because I was a recruiter. So I understood the importance of, you know, discussing salary, and just that my concern was really more that it's an opportunity I could pursue. So I asked that maybe halfway through the process. I didn't want to waste anyone's time, and found out that it was in fact a full-on career opportunity. And so I started to get excited about it. Like, oh, wait a second, Nike, huh? Yeah. Nike, let's think about this. I had no...
And they told you had to move to Portland.
Well, I've lived all over, though.
That's what I said.
So that part
That's
was
literally what I said.
You know, we were getting excited. Like, what is the
like,
Pacific Northwest platform?
But then everyone in the WIN program was talking about how it was so hard to live here. But I'm like, we've lived in the most weirdest places in the world. Like, this is easy.
This is easy. I think it depends on what you're looking for in a city.
Yeah.
For me, I have kids, so I'm looking for good schools and extracurricular activities, community, safety. Yeah. So we're in a safe neighborhood. They go to great schools. Their lives have expanded. And then I think we also, not only do we have the community of being at Nike, but then we also have the WIN community. Yeah. So for me, it's been nothing but a blessing.
You've had a really prolific sports career, but also your education is incredible. Stanford grad. You know, Jackie always says Olympia is literally one of the smartest people I know. And I was like, I have to meet this woman. Yeah, for real. And you said something that I think is a really important thing for all women, which is salary negotiations. And I think the fact that you just showed up right away and you were like, this is my expectation on salary is a really important rallying cry for all women. Because talking about money is a very uncomfortable thing for a lot of women. So like, I applaud you for like saying, hey, these are my expectations and this is what I want. Because all women should be doing that in every single job they're pursuing.
Absolutely. And I think some of that comes from the double standard in how we label behaviors in men versus women. One thing I'll say is, hey, ask and you shall receive. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no. Well, we're already at no. So then what have you lost?
That's true. That's a great way to put it.
You always say closed mouths don't get fed.
I always say that. In terms of the WIN program and from start to finish in the 2-year program, like what did WIN miss? And like, what did you appreciate about it?
Appreciated the opportunity to be recognized for achieving something that you can't just sign up for. You can't say, I'm going to go get a degree in being a professional athlete. Mm-hmm. So there's a layer of what's happening for professional athletes that we start our career in our childhood. So then it may potentially be all that we know. So unless you're going into sports, coaching, or fitness, you've built this impeccable resume that means nothing outside of sport. It literally means nothing. So I appreciated most of all from the WIN program this recognition of a stat that I find compelling, that over 90% of women executives played sports. Mm-hmm. So the reason the WIN program was really even designed was to target competitors, women who could be potential leaders in Nike because of how high we have, competed. So I appreciate the premise behind the WIN program. Yeah. I appreciate that we're serving athletes. If you have a body, you're an athlete, but then we're also serving athletes who are playing sport in particular. And so I appreciate coming into a company that's really not actually the industry we're from. It's not sports, but it's related to sports in a way where on one level we can talk about the soft skills, but also specific expertise in my sport I bring to the table. Yeah. Expertise about the athlete, about the consumer, who we're serving. I actually arrive with that at the highest level in a way that very few people at the organization can speak to. So now I'm an expert immediately upon entry. I also appreciated that I've been able to grow and expand myself. And so this has been nothing but a growth opportunity, a learning opportunity.
Totally. So I have a question just around this idea. So we talk a lot about being able to translate the things you learn in sports to life and career. And we know that for a lot of women athletes, it's going to take a long, long time to get from an equity perspective, a pay perspective, to the level that men are where they can choose whatever they want to do next, right? Like, we have to be really prolific to figure out what we do after sport. We as in you two, because you both were professional athletes. But what would be some advice that you would give to young athletes that, have aspirations of becoming great in their sport, but then also having to figure out what I do next? Like, how do you translate some of those skills over, and what have you learned in that experience?
For some people, maybe they love sport, so they can continue in sport. And then there's, even when you say continue in sport, there's opportunity outside of just coaching, right? There's front office opportunity. We have the new Portland Fire team, right? There's plenty of positions in terms of what all keeps the engines running. But I think the biggest advice would be that everything is opportunity. So sports is really a vehicle. It's not the destination. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to get you an education, potentially a scholarship. It's a vehicle for career advancement. It's a vehicle to learn, truly, if we think about it, the life skills necessary to compete. You're learning to be competitive. You're learning to be disciplined. You're learning hard work. You're learning resilience and grit. You're learning teamwork. You're learning sportsmanship. You're learning all these things that are actually building your character. So it's just understanding that everything is opportunity. And being spiritual is important, because if you are, you can understand how we're being positioned for the mission. So whatever team you are on, whatever you're learning, it's to further you along your path.
Beautiful.
That was so beautiful.
Said.
As we think about this topic of post-life after sport, the first question is, what do you think the world would have looked like for you without WIN? The second question is, how do you think more industries could embrace, like non-sports industries, could embrace thinking about sports and athletes as a competitive advantage?
Well, for me, I didn't come right off the court into the WIN program. So I already had a corporate experience. I was already well into what I call the afterlife, after basketball. We don't value enough the life lessons that you learn in sports. As I'm now at Nike, I realize how much things that I take for granted, things that were normal or commonplace in sport, aren't necessarily normal in the rest of our lives. We all learn to be individuals. We're individually competitive. We're individually operating and trying to survive. And so realizing the level of resilience and teamwork and communication, especially those candid, hard conversations, I think athletes are able to have those because that's the world we live in. I just need you to box out. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not trying, right? Just, you missed the box out.
Just pass the ball.
Just set the screen.
Yeah. Get the rebound.
Just do it, right? So I think there's so much to be said for that, like how much you learn to be accountable, but also hold others accountable. Like there's a comfort in that space because you only win when we're all comfortable holding each other accountable.
Could not agree more.
And ironically, I'm realizing how much that's not a given. You take it for granted when you come from a world where everyone is motivated individually and collectively. There's a high level of motivation. And so I would say that taking the same competitiveness, resilience, and desire to succeed wherever you go is going to have you having the resilience and grit necessarily to survive, but also the competitiveness will give you that edge in terms of learning the ropes in whatever field you're approaching, and to also have the humility. I mean, if you've won, you've also lost. So then you know how to lose and get back up and get back out there, get more shots up. Okay, I was donut today. Okay, let me get some shots up in the gym. You know how to do the things that will move you forward. And so taking that, embracing that, knowing that this is a life skill necessary and that it'll actually take you far.
Do you feel like, obviously Nike, and we've seen some other sports industries and a few other companies embrace this idea of how athletes can drive innovation in their companies. With the growth of women's sports and what's happening and how more companies are paying attention than ever before, mostly from a marketing perspective right now, how do you think some of these companies could take what WIN did and really like kind of flip the script and really encourage women who are athletes to lead with that when they're coming into these industries versus saying, oh, I'm done with sports now, I'm never going to talk about it again. I got to figure something else out.
If over 90% of women executives played sports, that's a telling stat. Why? Because they're competitive. Because, as we mentioned, they can have those hard conversations. They're willing to negotiate and not afraid to stand up and speak to what needs to be spoken to. I would absolutely encourage everyone, especially young women, to lean into their sports experience.
Let's talk a little bit about leadership. And in your playing experience, you have been on teams where you were the star. You've been on teams where you didn't play as much. I can personally understand this. I feel like I've been in the same boat as you. Could you talk about your experience and how you maneuvered both situations?
Sure. I actually feel like I've had the great fortune of sitting nearly in every seat on the bench. Been the star player, been a new draft pick, a new signee, the new trade, person coming back from a baby, the person coming back from an injury. I've experienced it all. And I think the biggest aspect of having to maneuver that was when my role changed from being a starter, nearly playing all the minutes, and tearing my ACL and not fully recovering from that. I went from playing 40 minutes a game to a DNP. I didn't even know what this was on the stat sheet. They didn't want to waste ink with zeros across my stat line, so they put DNP for did not play. I had never even seen this before. I'm serious. I was like, what is this? I was in a tough situation. I wasn't healthy, fortunate to still be on a team, and actually voted captain of my team. I was playing in Charlotte at the time. I was actually traded to Charlotte after my injury, and I realized my teammates were still listening to me or still looking to me for my responses to things. I understood that I had a responsibility not to be in my feelings, because clearly I didn't want to be at the end of the bench with the DNP. I wanted to lead the charge. I mean, my name is Olympia, right? I'm thinking I'm supposed to fulfill some prophecy or something, you know? And it wasn't sitting on the end of the bench, right? But I understood God still had a purpose for me being here. Some people get cut. I'm still here. I'm not here to be a cancer on the team. And so I used my influence and still led my teammates. It was interesting because I didn't win the 2 championships that I won. I didn't win until after I tore my ACL, after my role changed. And it's funny, after my career was over, I had a recurring nightmare where it would be like, you know, coach would say, Olympia, you're up, get in the game. And then I looked down and I didn't have on my shoes. Or we'd be leaving for a road trip and my luggage wasn't packed. So I was having this for maybe a year. I can't remember how long, but it was like recurring. And then my mother told me a story of a woman who was a minister and had actually gotten into a physical altercation with her husband, who's a minister. And so an embarrassing situation, and she was being interviewed about it. And, you know, the person doing the interview, what do you think about the fact that you helped so many congregations, and when you were in your time of need, not too many people came to help? What do you think about that? And she thought for just a second and said, you know, for the people who helped me, it was their assignment. For those who didn't, it wasn't. And there was something about this message that my dream, maybe the same night, the dream changed. I can remember thinking in my dream, it was like I'm lucid dreaming, and my coach is like, hey, we've got video, grab your stuff, let's go. And I can remember thinking, well, this is the part where I don't have my stuff, and I wake up. I'm like, coach, I don't have my stuff's not ready. And she's like, okay, grab it, get it together and let's go. So I'm like, what? Okay, I grab it and then I go. And then I wake up and I'm like, what was that about? And then like maybe 2 nights later, coach is like, and it's the same coach, so that's what's so funny, right? The coach is like, hey, why don't you show them how you were dunking? And I'm like, you know, yeah, clearly a dream. I could dunk when I was healthy, but not at this point of my career. But so then I was dunking, and then I woke up and I was like, what did that mean? And then I immediately realized this message of assignment. I didn't realize, I don't live in regret, but I didn't realize that there was a part of my career that I regretted. I had transformed my game. You know, I went from being the person that was most athletic, the fastest, I could jump the highest, all the things, to someone who couldn't do that, right? I didn't have a first step. I wasn't the most athletic. And I had a coach. I really had to transform my game. I had to become a shooter in order to continue to play. And so I had a coach overseas that said to me, he was reading everyone the riot act, and he decided to, tear me down. He's like, oh, in Olympia, everybody knows you can shoot, but can you drive? I'm like, joke's on you, sir. Because if everybody knows I can shoot, I've arrived. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so game over. So you think you're tearing me down. Actually, say that again for the people on the back. What's that? So
that is such a good story.
But so I was feeling like I never got a chance to show everybody in the WNBA like how I had expanded my game. And also maybe that I never reached some of my personal goals. Like I said, I'm Olympia. I'm supposed to be MVP type energy, right? This is how I'm thinking of myself going into it all. But the dream changed because the assignment was not to be the MVP of the WNBA. Yeah. The assignment was actually to learn how to lead from whatever seat I found myself in. I thought I was leading because I was the best player on the team, and I was leading by example, which is a form of leadership. But when I discovered everyone was still listening to me, I still had influence. I understood my team needed my leadership. They needed me to say the right things or maybe say what wouldn't even be said. I mean, there were times in the huddle where the coach in Sacramento would say, "Did you hear what Olympia said? Listen to her." Like, okay, yeah, I guess, I'm leaning in. But it was that the team needed leadership. So I learned servant leadership. So the assignment was not to be the MVP. The assignment was to learn how to lead from behind or whatever seat you find yourself.
This story to me is so fascinating because it's a hard pill to swallow when an injury makes you a different player, right? You were supposed to be a WNBA MVP. You were supposed to be one of the best players ever, right? And then this injury occurs. And then how do you use that, to direct that in a positive way? And I think a lot of people aren't able to figure out what that is. But for you to be able to respond the way that you did and use leadership as like, okay, this is what I can contribute to, this is what I can be great at, and this is how I can be on a team, right? And for me, I think my experience was very similar in that I was the number one player in my class in the country, out of high school, and I was supposed to be this great player. And after all my injuries, I kind of alienated myself a little bit. And I do think I saw my teammates looking for me for things, but I didn't have that confidence anymore. So I kind of went into this like ball. But when people started reaching out to me about, hey, how were you able to come back from 5 ACL tears? I started getting all these messages and all these people and all these parents that wanted me to help their kid, So I was like, okay, this is bigger than basketball for me, And so I really used that. And I was like, I'm going to be that poster child, quote unquote, of this ACL injury. And I'm going to be able to really help these people and see that they can come out of the injury and still be good and still be great and still, achieve their dreams. Because for me, it was like, I still wanted to make a WNBA roster, and that was the only thing that I wanted. So it took me, getting cut a few times to finally make a roster in 2015, and I finally did. But yeah, I just think your story is fascinating, and I think that we're in a similar boat with that,
Yeah, but I think what you're really speaking to is you found your purpose. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're doing things, you're thinking the purpose is one thing, but you have to find your purpose.
Right.
Right. And so that was the same for me. Like once you find your voice, right? A lot of times our experiences are our testimony. That's our ministry. That's where our work lies. And so your injuries are literally your ministry. You have the experience that most people don't. So what you're speaking to when they say, well, you don't understand. Well, actually I do. And maybe even more. So right. Then you could imagine, right? Yeah. And so there's so much value in finding your voice and finding your purpose and sharing that, because we're not here in a silo.
Right.
We all are standing on the shoulders of giants, whether it's family members, whether it's mentors, role models, right? We're looking to people for guidance. And when you're in it, you're not thinking you're one of the people for guidance. You're in the thick of it, just trying to live. But when you realize I am, dare I say, elder in the village, but it takes a village, and we're one of the elders just from having experienced it.
Yeah.
You said something that I think is so transformative, which is the assignment has changed. I think that is incredibly powerful. But finding your place in your career, in any career, is extremely difficult. And I think every woman, if they can take away one of the most powerful things from this interview, is this advice about how the assignment has changed. Because I think that is the rallying cry. That's what leads to innovation. That's what leads to leadership and finding your purpose. And so for me, that was like a very transformative part of your story of just the assignment's changed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love using sports metaphors and obviously basketball metaphors, but it's really, you have to be able to pivot or make the next play. Right? It's like, we don't have time to cry about it. Like, let's just make the next play.
Yeah.
You turned it over. Okay, get back on defense.
Yeah.
They scored. Okay, let's go score right back on them. Maybe we lost the game. All right, let's get in this locker room. Let's get in this huddle, get ourselves together, figure out what went wrong, look at the film, get in practice, work on it, and get back after it. Even if it's a losing season, all right, we'll live to play another day. And so I feel like that pivot and make the next play has been a big one for me.
Olympia, you have worn so many hats in your life. You are, we said earlier on the show, a multidimensional woman. you're a mother, you're an athlete, you're a business leader, you're a founder. You're going to hopefully do a million other things. How did you find passion to become an entrepreneur?
Sure. I initially started down that path because I had a fan club when I was playing for the Indiana Fever and did a basketball camp, decided to do a family basketball camp because I wanted to include the parents. My mother at the time was in corporate America, but she also volunteered as a certified parenting instructor. So she had done parenting classes and was passionate about that. So we did a family basketball camp where it's parenting your student athlete while the kids were a seminar for the parents while the kids were in a camp, so that the parents weren't just sitting around during this camp. And so it was a big hit, and the parents were really just wanting more. And we realized, my mother and I realized, the parents are really wanting more because there's a lack of parenting resources, right? It may be the most important work you do in your life, that you don't need any type of certification prior to the fact, any type of education. You're just thrown to the wolves. You're pregnant, do it, figure it out. And so we decided to start Super Parenting LLC. So it's a parenting education company where we also wrote a book, Super Parenting, Raising the Next Generation, and provided online parenting classes as well as parenting classes to the international community. All the way in Latvia with a translator teaching parenting. And just even the process of writing the book. It's funny because when I was writing it, my mother was the person who had all this experience teaching parenting courses, even to the point of now she has her doctorate in education because she wanted to be an expert in this field. And I felt almost maybe like a fraud a little bit because I didn't feel like that expert as I was researching and writing this book. But it's interesting because my mother and I laugh about it now that I lived what we put in the book. And now I feel like I am a parenting expert. Thank you very much. So that whet my appetite, I guess, a bit. And as we talked about before, CEO, right, of Conseco Mafia, which is so funny. If someone sees just that little segment, they're like, what? Conseco Mafia?
It'll drive
Inside
some
joke,
clicks.
yes.
It'll drive some clicks.
Exactly. Clickbait, exactly. I was in Conseco Mafia. But, just wanting to serve and not be limited by an opportunity that someone else is deciding whether I have the credentials for. But also got into life coaching because I was always the person that people were going to for advice. Doing a lot of public speaking. I started public speaking when I was a kid, actually, entering speech contests and running for office in student government and what have you. So I think just my deep desire to serve, to help others. So I got certified in life coaching and several different certifications just to have the credentials to go with what I believed was, the spiritual gifts of knowledge and wisdom, So
I joked about this earlier, but every time I'm with you in your presence, I feel a little bit smarter when I leave. But I think that everything that you've done in your career, to me, it makes so much sense because you impact me every time I have a conversation with you. In some way, I feel like I learned something, So I don't know if you're still in that space or not, like the life coaching space or motivational speaking, but to me, those things for you are no-brainers.
Well, thank you. It's funny you say that because that's what I was doing. Had I not gone into the WIN program,
I think
that's the space that I am doing both. I'm currently doing both. I'm absolutely racing after growing this aspect of my life and my service, not just for, entrepreneurial or financial gain, but truly an assignment. I believe I'm on assignment. The assignment is to share the spiritual gifts. And interestingly, it's actually the utterance of knowledge and the utterance of wisdom. I didn't realize that, when you look at the spiritual gifts in the Bible. And I feel like that's important because I had a coach one time say, all I hear is talk. Talk is cheap, and it almost made me want to shrink back a little bit and not speak as much. But then I realized, however, the teams that win are talking.
Yeah.
Right? And if no one else is talking and something needs to be said, I'm confident enough and willing to accept the assignment and saying what needs to be said. There's value in saying what needs to be said. Even now in our society, we can acknowledge there are people talking and maybe shouldn't be. Yeah. And maybe we need to hear more from the people who are willing to say what needs to be said, you know, what's actually going to pull us together, because none of us are in a silo, right? We all are born into a community. That means we're on a team right out of the gate. You're on a team. So we have to learn how to be good teammates. There's value in that, you know? And so I value my role as a good teammate.
I think it's why we found each other, because we were like the two non-scientists in the industry that were like, we love talking to people, so we're gonna like team up here. We're part of the team. No, they're fantastic. But you know, I was listening to another podcast and they were saying, you know, all these billionaires are trying to figure out how to live longer. And like, what is the key to immortality, to living longer? And the one constant variable is not money. It's not socioeconomic status. It's literally the quality of your relationships with people. It's the community. It's your tribe. And I was just like, every time I hear that over and over again, it just makes me feel even more passionate about helping other people find their tribes, helping people feel connected in. And that's the power of having a podcast, really. Like why we started it is because we wanted to, even if 5 people listen, we wanted to influence and tell people you belong here. Women, you belong in sports, you belong here. And so I think you're obviously living that mission every day and inspiring. I mean, you've definitely inspired us very, very deeply.
Well, thank you.
So you've already written one book, and a little birdie told me you might be writing another book.
I am set to drop it any day now. My Monday Motivations, 52 Weeks of Wisdom. So it's a weekly mindset reset so we can all stay motivated. We need motivation in order to be our best. Motivation impacts so much of our lives. Our health, our well-being, our happiness, our productivity, so much stems from motivation, and we can lose it at times. Some people get burnt out, you know, we can get sucked into the drudgery of it and forget our way. And so I like this idea of helping people to mentally reset. And I think it comes from being in the sports world where, one, so many people were already motivated. But even if we weren't, we would huddle, right? We would cheer each other back up. We'd be in the locker room pumping each other up. We'd get in that huddle, pump each other up. You'd be on the bench, high-fiving, you know, you got all kind of handshakes and all this stuff to get ourselves mentally ready. And so motivation is actually a big part of sports. But then you come out of sports and nobody's high-fiving you. Nobody's cheering you on. Nobody's calling the huddle and pumping each other up and getting everybody all revved up and ready to go. But that's still my energy. I get amped up. I'm real chill right now, but I also get revved up, you know?
I've seen you revved up.
Yeah, and so I had a really hard clap when I played, like, you know? And it's like, that's the energy I have and want to share and spread, because we need to maintain motivation to overcome, especially some of the things that are happening in society. If we all just give up, then we lose here. But if we maintain our motivation, our purpose, our enthusiasm, then we can accomplish some things.
Jackie's that person for me when I'm just feeling like super low and down on myself or what. I call her Coach Jackie, because like I know she's going to like be there to rally and cheer me on, and because she has that inherent skill because she was on a team, a sports team. And it just like, it's such a gift that you guys are able to share that part of yourselves with the world and to cheer people like me on and other people, other women in your communities on, people, and just like have that gift, because not everybody has it.
Thank you.
And it's not like we don't, you know, have times where we don't feel motivated too. I go through that, you go through that, but I think there are skills that we learn in sports that help us revive that feeling, you know, and I credit sports a lot for that for me. And I think you see that in us because of our sport background, like, you know, to your point. But anyways, that was amazing. That was truly, you dropped some gems.
Wow. It's like, I feel like every time we have a guest on, I really have to like take a step back and think about everything I just learned from this person. And it is truly a gift, Jackie, that we get to sit together in your home, in our studio, and have these people come and share their life stories with us. Like there's no greater gift. And what we just heard from Olympia is really like it really made an imprint on me in a very significant way. But before I share my perspective, you obviously go a little further back with Olympia. What were a couple takeaways for you?
I think going back to what you said, I think you take something different from every interview, right? And you learn something from everyone. And like you said, we've had just a list of amazing people that have came through on the show. Olympia is someone who I've highly respected for a very long time. Didn't know a lot about her career prior to the WIN program, but once I got to know her a little bit, I started doing a little bit of research and really got to understand who she was when she played. To sit in this studio next to her and hear about her experience after tearing her ACL was something really inspiring for me to hear, and something that I also have never been able to hear from another athlete. What I mean by that is not saying that I felt my experience was just one of one. I know there's been a ton of other people that have gone through injury and, things shift after that. But I think what I've always felt alone with was that alienation feeling after, like, what is my purpose? And I don't know if I've ever actually spoken to another athlete about that, of like that dark moment, that dark time. And for me, I really didn't understand my purpose because I wasn't, the top player anymore. And I think hearing her story and how she wanted to be a WNBA champion, but her trajectory changed after that, and what was her purpose? And she found her purpose in leadership and using her voice. And that to me was just so special to hear, because I could relate to that. I found, my purpose in helping other athletes overcome this injury. So it was just such a surreal moment for me to sit there and listen and just like hear her thought process throughout all of that. And it was truly special for me. So
thank you so much for sharing that, because I truly believe that your openness and Olympia's openness, and when athletes tell their stories just raw and real, it hits home whether you're an athlete or not. And so I'm so glad you had that experience with her and you could have that shared experience, because it's really, really important for us to just be open and honest.
Absolutely. And I think she has a way with words and metaphors, and like she says a lot of things that make you think about things in a different way. And I just really, really appreciated so many things that she said. But I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on the interview and what you took away from everything.
I mean, it's really hard to choose one thing, but it was this idea of the assignment changing. Because I feel like, and we talk about this all the time, but I feel like, for me, I've always been so ambitious. I've been so passionate. It's both a strength and a weakness, frankly. And for me to hear someone like her who's been basically gotten to Mount Olympus, to use that analogy of her name, Olympia, to fall and to come back and to change course and to change assignment. For me, founding Clack with you and our team was the assignment change. Mm-hmm. And I think that is whenever I'm having a hard day or feeling like things aren't going our way or things aren't moving fast enough or our numbers need to be higher, whatever.
Or you're not feeling motivated.
Or I'm not feeling motivated. Like, I'm going to remember that, because it's a gift that we get to sit in the seat together and we get to have these conversations and we get to work with the team that we get to work with and meet the people we get to meet. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that's the purpose, and where it leads us next that's the exciting journey. And I think for anybody who's not happy in what they're doing, whatever it is, like, know that you can change the assignment.
Yeah, I definitely thought of you when I knew that spoke volumes to you, because I know everything that you went through, in corporate America, and then making the decision to start Clack. So I felt like that really hit home for you. It hit home for me too. Everything she said hit home, but that was big. That was huge.
Well, and I think it also just shows that you can do a lot of things. You don't have to, you're a testament to that, Jack. You wear a million hats, and my jobs right now are running Clack with you and being a mother.
Yeah.
Like, those are my two biggest jobs, and being a wife. But for the most part, being a mother is a huge job for you. You hope to add that to your list soon.
Yeah.
But you're a sports agent and you're building a company, and it's hard, and women we can do it, but we have to have these open conversations and share every part of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, to really succeed together. And that's our greatest strength.
And feel like you're not alone and other people are going through similar things,
100%, because everything looks beautiful and shiny on Instagram, y'all.
Yeah.
And then you peel that back, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of ugly too.
Absolutely.
But that's life.
Yeah.
So anyways, wow. I feel like I'm going to have good dreams tonight.
Same. I'm leaving this room a smarter person. I said that in the interview. I'm saying it again.
We're going to be smarter, but first,
higher IQs over here.
First, we're going to eat. Oh, as always.
Yeah, ravenous. So
Jack snack attack.
Yeah. Oh, snack attack. I love that. That's really good.
That's gonna be a sub Instagram handle of Clack.
Jack snack attack.
Jack snack attack.
Fire. My dad called me Jack attack. Like that was like one of our things.
Done.
But Jack snack attack. Fire.
Done.
Love that.
All right, y'all. Well, we hope you enjoyed the interview, and we can't wait to see you next episode.
Yeah,
and
we
let us know what
appreciate you
think.
listening.
We love y'all. Bye.
Bye.